Your explanations are confessions. Every word you offer when someone attacks you is evidence you've already been convicted in a courtroom you never agreed to enter. Picture the moment. Someone questions your judgment in front of others. A text message twists your intentions. Your boss implies you're not committed. You feel it instantly, the heat crawling up your neck, your jaw tightening your mind, already rehearsing the perfect rebuttal you'll deliver 3 days too late in the shower. So you do what you've been trained to do since childhood. You explain. You provide context. You pull up screenshots, timestamps, receipts. You list everything you've done to prove you're not what they said you are. And in that exact moment, you hand them the knife and show them where to cut. Because here's what Niccolo Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago, that you're still learning power is not about being right. It's about who controls the frame. The person defending is the person who has accepted someone else's authority to judge them. You are living in a courtroom that exists only in your mind, exhausting yourself, proving your innocence to people who were never qualified to be your judge. You keep receipts like evidence. You replay conversations like testimony. You craft responses like closing arguments. But the trial is fake. The verdict was decided the moment you started explaining yourself. Let me take you to Renaissance Italy, 1502. Cesare Borgia, the most feared military commander of his time, faced accusations of treachery from rival families. They spread rumors, questioned his honor, challenged his legitimacy. You know what Borgia didn't do. He didn't send letters defending his character. He didn't hold press conferences explaining his intentions. He acted. He consolidated territory. He made his accusers irrelevant through position, not persuasion. Machiavelli watched this unfold and wrote in The Prince what would become dark psychology's fundamental rule. Those who defended their honor with words died with their honor intact, but their throats cut. Those who defended their power with action lived to be feared. Here's the hidden mechanism you're trapped in. When someone attacks your character, your competence, your intentions, you think the problem is the accusation. It's not. The surface problem is what they said. The real problem is what happens when you respond. Defense does 3 things to you, and all of them transfer power. First, it accepts their authority. The moment you explain yourself, you've walked into their courtroom and acknowledged they have the right to judge you. Second, it reveals your vulnerabilities. What you defend is what hurts you. You've just handed them a map to every insecurity you're trying to hide. Third, it makes you the one answering questions instead of asking them. They set the agenda. You're reacting. That's called being controlled. Who benefits from this? Every manipulator who feeds on your need to be understood. Every system designed to keep you explaining instead of executing. Anyone who profits from your uncertainty about your own worth. The accusation was never about discovering truth. It was about discovering if you'll submit to their judgment. And you did. But why do you do it? Why is your first instinct to provide evidence of your innocence? Because as social animals, your nervous system still believes being misunderstood equals being expelled from the tribe equals death. You scramble to fix their perception because your biology is screaming that ostracism is extinction. But here's what your primitive brain doesn't understand. The tribe is imaginary, and the people attacking you were never your people. Let me show you another historical example that makes this visceral. When Pope Julius II accused Machiavelli's Florence of weakness in 1506, the Florentine leaders spent months sending diplomatic letters explaining their military position, their intentions, their honor. You know what Julius did. He ignored every letter and marched his army through Florentine territory anyway. Meanwhile, Venice, when similarly accused, sent no letters. They repositioned their forces and made Julius's accusations irrelevant through strategic action. Florence explained itself into irrelevance. Venice acted itself into respect. This pattern repeats endlessly throughout history because human psychology hasn't changed. Explanation signals uncertainty. Silence signals certainty. Action signals power. When you defend yourself with words, you're essentially saying, "I need you to agree with my version of reality before I can proceed with confidence." When you refuse to defend, you're saying, "My reality is my reality, whether you acknowledge it or not." Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, chapter 18, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." He wasn't giving advice. He was revealing the game. He wrote this in 1513, advising Lorenzo de' Medici on maintaining power in a world of constant betrayal. Why is this counterintuitive? Because we're raised on authenticity. Be yourself. Communication is key. Good people explain themselves. We're taught that being understood is the path to success. But observe reality. Every powerful person you admire carefully curates what they reveal while guarding their private truth. They don't defend their real selves to strangers. They protect the perception they've chosen to project. CEOs don't justify every decision. Presidents don't explain their reasoning to critics. Leaders who seek approval before acting never lead. This is how to be confident, not by convincing others you're confident, but by refusing to submit your self-concept to their vote. The core Machiavellian principle at work here is what I call the power of perceived indifference, and it comes directly from Machiavelli's observations in his discourses on Livy, where he studied Roman military leadership. Machiavelli noticed that Roman generals maintained absolute authority, not through charisma or explanation, but through decisiveness. The moment a general justified his military decisions to subordinates, he signaled those decisions were up for debate. Effective commanders issued orders as facts, not proposals. They understood something about human psychology that self-help books won't tell you. Explanation positions you as someone who needs permission. Now this sounds cruel to modern ears, doesn't it? Society has taught you that explanation equals respect, that good people communicate, clarify, ensure understanding. Refusing to explain sounds arrogant, dismissive, even narcissistic. Every conflict resolution seminar will tell you the opposite of what I'm about to say. But let's practice some deep thinking here. Watch what actually happens in the real world, not in the world we wish existed. When CEOs constantly defend their decisions to employees, they lose credibility. When parents negotiate with tantrums, they create tyrants. When partners continuously explain themselves, they breed contempt, not understanding. There's a brutal hierarchy here that successful people have internalized but will never admit publicly. Respect is more valuable than understanding. They would rather be respected and misunderstood than understood and pitied. Why? Because understanding without respect is just detailed knowledge of your weaknesses. It's intimacy without power. It's exposure without protection. Here's the psychological reversal that changes everything. Traditional thinking says, if I explain myself clearly enough, they'll see I'm right and respect me. The Machiavellian reality, the effectual truth as he called it, is this. Their attack was never about discovering truth. It was about discovering if I'll submit to their judgment. When you refuse to defend yourself, you reveal something that terrifies manipulators. You reveal, your opinion of me is not my reality. Your courtroom is not my jurisdiction. Your verdict has no authority here. This is self-mastery in its purest form, the mastery of not needing external validation to know who you are. This is how to win arguments without arguing. You don't beat them in their game. You refuse to play their game entirely. You establish a new game where their accusations are just noise you choose not to dignify with response. But here's where most people misunderstand this principle. They think refusing to defend means becoming stone-faced and emotionless. That's not Machiavellian, that's just being a robot. The real skill is maintaining your emotional center while appearing completely unaffected by their attempts to destabilize you. It's the difference between suppressing your reaction and transcending the need to react. Think of it this way: when a master chess player faces an amateur's aggressive opening, they don't panic and scramble to defend every piece. They recognize the amateur's strategy is built on false assumptions, so they calmly develop their position and let the amateur's aggression collapse under its own poor logic. That's what you're doing when someone attacks you. You're recognizing that their attack is built on the false assumption that you accept their authority to judge you. When you refuse that premise entirely, their whole strategy collapses. Prince Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people spend their entire lives not learning. People don't attack strength, they attack perceived weakness. Every accusation, every criticism, every attempt to make you defend yourself is actually a test. They're testing whether you believe what they're saying about you. The moment you defend, you've confirmed their test was worth running you. Do doubt yourself. The moment you refuse to defend, you've passed the test. You know who you are, and their opinion is genuinely irrelevant to that knowledge. Now let me show you exactly how this works in real situations. These are psychological tricks, but they're not manipulative in the way you think. They're simply the strategic application of emotional intelligence. Understanding that most conflicts are not about facts, but about power dynamics. Tactic 1. The weaponized pause. Your boss in a meeting. Your numbers this quarter are concerning. What's your excuse? The old you would have said, well, actually, if you look at the market conditions and the fact that Johnson's team didn't deliver their part on time, plus I was dealing with that client emergency in November. Defensive. Explaining. Weak. Here's the Machiavellian approach. You pause. 3 full seconds of direct eye contact. Slight head tilt. Then you say, the numbers are what they are. And then you stop talking. You let them sit in that silence. Here's the step-by-step breakdown. First, receive the attack without physical reaction. No flinching. No preparing your speech while they're talking. Second, create a deliberate void. Count to 3 slowly in your head. This is critical. The pause is where the power transfers. Third, acknowledge only the observable fact, not their interpretation. The numbers exist. That's true. Everything else they're layering on top, that's their story. Fourth, return. Serve with a question that shifts the frame. What specific changes would you like to see? Notice what you just did. You moved the conversation from your failure to their expectations, from defense to strategy, from past to future. You didn't defend, you redirected. This is how masters navigate power. The psychology here is crucial to understand. In that pause, those 3 seconds of silence, you're creating what psychologists call a pattern interrupt. Your boss's nervous system expected a defensive scramble. When you don't provide it, their brain experiences cognitive dissonance. They prepared for a fight, and you gave them a void. That void is uncomfortable for them, not for you. They will feel compelled to fill it, which means they start talking, which means you're no longer the one being interrogated. The power has shifted. And when you ask, what specific changes would you like to see? You've done something brilliant. You've acknowledged reality without accepting blame, and you've repositioned yourself as someone solving a problem rather than someone who is the problem. This is emotional intelligence at the tactical level. You're managing the emotional frame of the entire interaction. Tactic 2, the strategic concession. Your partner says, you're emotionally unavailable. You never share your feelings. You're cold. The defensive response everyone uses. That's not true. Remember last week when I told you about my day, and I always ask how you're feeling. You're being unfair. Watch how a Machiavellian handles this. You say, "You're right. I am reserved." Pause. Let that land. Watch their confusion spread across their face. Then, is that a problem for you? Here's what you just did. You stripped the shame from the fact. You agreed with the observable behavior. Yes, you're reserved, but not with the character assassination. Reserved is your language. Emotionally unavailable was theirs. You took ownership of your nature while refusing to accept their value judgment about whether that nature is bad. Then you redirected ownership entirely. You made it their problem to solve, not yours to fix. This exposes whether they want you to change or just wanted to hurt you. If they want genuine change, they'll engage with your question. If they just wanted to attack, they'll scramble because you didn't give them the fight they wanted. This is emotional intelligence. Weaponized understanding that feelings are information, not commands, and that you get to decide which feelings you respond to. Here's the deeper layer most people miss. When you say, "Is that a problem for you?" you're doing something psychologically sophisticated. You're externalizing their discomfort. You're making it clear that if there's a problem, it exists in their evaluation system, not in your nature. You're reserved, that's a fact. Whether that fact is a problem is entirely subjective and entirely their responsibility to manage. This is where dark psychology becomes a tool for protection rather than manipulation. You're not gaslighting them. You're not denying reality. You're simply refusing to accept their value judgments as objective truth. And in doing so, you force them to confront something uncomfortable. Maybe their standards aren't universal laws. Maybe their discomfort with your nature is their work to do, not yours. The people who cannot handle this response will reveal themselves immediately. They'll escalate. They'll call you defensive. The irony, they'll accuse you of not caring. And that's perfect because now you know they weren't interested in genuine connection. They were interested in control. The people who can handle this response will respect you more because you've shown them you know who you are and you're not negotiating that with anyone. Tactic 3. The reflective interrogation. A colleague says publicly, "Interesting that you're giving advice on work-life balance when you're here till 9 p.m. every night." The defensive trap. "I'm not here every night. And when I am, it's because I care about quality. At least I'm not cutting corners like some people." The power move. "Why do you think my schedule bothers you?" Pause. That's an interesting observation about yourself. Do you see what happened? You didn't address the accusation. It was bait. Instead, you psychoanalyzed the attacker. You flipped the microscope back on them. You reframed their attack as self-revelation. You've told me more about you than about me. Here's the deep thinking behind this tactic. Attacks are almost always projections. People who are secure in their work-life balance don't monitor yours. By refusing to defend and instead examining their motivation, you accomplish 3 things. You put them on the defensive. You reveal they're attacking their own insecurity, and you demonstrate you're psychologically above the fray. Tactic 4. The amused acknowledgement. Someone on social media. "You're such a narcissist. Everything is always about you." The old response would be a 500-word paragraph explaining your intentions, referencing past posts, defending your character. Exhausting yourself for an audience of strangers. The Machiavellian response. Guilty as charged. And then nothing else. You don't elaborate. You don't engage further. You don't check if they responded. You just agreed with theatrical lightness. You owned it with humor. You refused to make it serious, and your refusal to be wounded is what actually wounds them. This signals, This doesn't land because I'm not insecure about this. It's psychological Aikido using their force to make them look foolish while you look unbothered. Tactic 5. The narrative seizure. Family member. You're so selfish. You didn't even call Mom on her birthday. Defensive response. I did call. I called in the morning. Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Machiavellian response. I called her yesterday, but it sounds like you're upset I didn't coordinate my actions with you. Help me understand why you need that. You stated the fact once, calmly, not emotionally. Then you reframed their attack. This isn't about Mom, it's about their need for control over you. Then you forced them to articulate their real complaint, which is never about the surface issue. Most attacks are about power, not facts. They're not actually mad you didn't call. They're mad you don't submit to their judgment. By refusing to prove yourself, and instead naming their deeper need, you expose the game they're playing. This is how you never defend yourself while maintaining all your power. Now let me tell you what nobody talks about regarding these tactics. They don't work if you're using them as manipulation techniques while still being internally desperate for approval. This is not a script to memorize. This is a reflection of internal sovereignty. If you say these words while your energy is screaming, "Please like me," people will smell the incongruence a mile away. The real work, the Machiavelli daily practice that changes everything, is building the internal foundation that makes these responses natural rather than performative. You need to genuinely arrive at a place where other people's misunderstanding of you causes you no distress. Not because you've numbed yourself, but because you've done the deep thinking required to know yourself so thoroughly that external opinions become irrelevant data points rather than threats to your identity. This is why these psychological tricks work for some people and fail for others. The ones who succeed aren't just using techniques, they've done the internal excavation work. They've sat with their shadows. They've accepted the parts of themselves they used to defend. They've realized that the version of themselves they were defending was often just a mask they wore to gain approval anyway. When you defend yourself, you're almost always defending an idealized image, not your actual self. You're defending the person you think you should be, not the person you are. And that's exhausting because it requires you to maintain a performance, while simultaneously proving the performance is authentic. It's an impossible game. The only winning move is to stop playing. Chapter 5. The Transformation. Now I need to warn you about what will happen when you start implementing this. Your body will rebel against you. Your hands will shake. Your mind will scream that you're being rude, that you're arrogant, that you're destroying relationships. You'll feel the terror of social disapproval like ice water in your veins. This is not a sign you're doing it wrong. This is a sign you're killing the part of yourself that was raised to be obedient. You need to understand the identity shift happening here. Your old identity defined good person as someone who explains, who justifies, who seeks approval, who manages other people's emotions for them. Your new identity defines effective person as someone who owns their reality, who refuses false courtrooms, who lets others carry their own emotional baggage. You are not becoming colder. You are becoming clearer. You are not becoming cruel. You are becoming precise about where you end and they begin. You are not becoming uncaring. You are becoming unwilling to trade your sovereignty for temporary approval. Let me be specific about what this feels like in practice, because the discomfort is real, and if you're not prepared for it, you'll retreat back to your old patterns. In the first few days of never defending yourself, you will feel selfish. You will feel guilty. You will replay interactions and convince yourself you were too harsh, too cold, too disconnected. Your people-pleasing programming will tell you that you've damaged relationships irreparably. This is the death throes of your old identity. It's supposed to hurt. You're killing the part of yourself that believed love was earned through explanation and approval was won through performance. That part of you has been running your life for decades. It will not go quietly. But here's what happens if you push through. After about a week, you'll notice something strange. The people who truly respect you will seem to respect you more. They'll be confused at first. Why aren't you scrambling to explain yourself anymore? But then they'll adapt. And in that adaptation, you'll see something beautiful. They'll start treating you like someone whose internal reality is solid, not negotiable. The people who are using your need for approval to control you, they'll either escalate dramatically or disappear. Both outcomes are gifts. The escalation reveals who they really are, controllers who are panicking because their leverage is gone. The disappearance reveals that the relationship was transactional, and the transaction was you provide constant validation of their judgments. They provide you with conditional acceptance. This is the internal revolution Prince Machiavelli was really writing about. Not how to govern states, but how to govern yourself. Not how to control others, but how to stop letting others control you. The prince was never just a manual for rulers. It was a manual for anyone who wanted to stop being ruled. The question you must answer, and this requires brutal honesty, is this: do you need them to understand you, or do you need to understand yourself? Because if you know who you are, their misunderstanding becomes irrelevant. If you don't know who you are, their judgment becomes your identity. Machiavelli's final lesson, the one that applies to Machiavelli daily in your actual life. The prince who needs his subjects to love him is at their mercy. The prince who needs only his own certainty is untouchable. Here's your challenge. Stop defending yourself, not forever, just for 7 days. When accused, attacked, or misunderstood, say nothing, or agree, or redirect, but do not explain. Do not justify. Do not prove. Sit in the unbearable discomfort of being misunderstood. Feel the urge to fix their perception, to be the good guy, to manage their emotions. And let that urge burn to ash. Watch what dies your need for approval. Watch what's born your power. The world will call this arrogance. Let it. Arrogance is just sovereignty that makes insecure people uncomfortable. You are not here to comfort them. You are here to reclaim yourself. The question is not whether you can stop defending yourself. The question is, who would you become if you did? Someone who never defends yourself is someone who has nothing left to defend. You've already accepted every part of who you are. You've integrated the darkness and the light. You've stopped seeking permission to exist. That person is untouchable. That person has achieved self-mastery. That person has learned Machiavelli's greatest trick, that true power comes not from winning every argument, but from refusing to participate in arguments designed to diminish you. This is deep thinking applied to power. This is emotional intelligence weaponized for your protection. This is dark psychology understood and used not to manipulate others, but to stop being manipulated. Here's what I want you to understand. As you close this and return to your life, the next time someone attacks you, you will feel the pull to defend yourself. It will feel like gravity. Your mouth will open. The explanations will queue up in your mind, like planes waiting to take off. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can give them what they're asking for your submission to their judgment, your energy, your power. Or you can simply not. You can sit in the discomfort of being misunderstood and discover that it doesn't kill you. You can learn that your identity is not dependent on their comprehension of it. The people who understand this, who truly internalize how to be confident without external validation, become magnetic. Not because they're trying to attract anyone, but because sovereignty is inherently attractive. People are drawn to those who seem complete, who don't need anything from them, who are genuinely unbothered by judgment. Never defend yourself, not because you have nothing to defend, but because you have nothing to prove. Your life is your argument. Your results are your testimony. Your presence is your evidence. Everything else is just noise.